but there's something about the pain of a mistake that is valuable, right? But I think we have to learn to love them. We have to learn to love that challenge and a little bit of that pain. Again, you mitigate the risk, but love the pain of that, because if you can learn to love making mistakes, you can do anything, and you'll be humbled by it, so you'll become a better person.
I think the most important thing to know based on this conversation we've been having, Brett, is that there's no right way to do it. Wherever you are, whatever it is that you're doing, however it is that you're parenting, however it is that you're showing up as a father, that's enough. That's good enough. So thank you, Feel Good Fathers, for tuning in. Thank you, folks that are really interested in this topic. My man Brett's here with me, and a meaningful quote for Brett is, "The goal that sees farthest, who flies highest." Instead of being enfeebled by age, the elder had been empowered by it. He could outfly any gull in the flock, and he had learned skills that others were only gradually coming to know. Brett, my
Mm.
man, you mentioned to me that Jonathan Livingston Seagull, specifically Richard Bach, was a really important author to you, and this quote was meaningful. What does this mean to you?
Well, Jonathan is a gull who wanted to be more than just what his experience is, and in life, we we are always looking to grow. At least that's what I try and do in my life. Life itself is looking to grow. And, we have kids with this notion that they're going to grow and become more than us, right? And, uh, and I think you have to continue to challenge yourself to come outside of what you were yesterday and what you are in the present, to become more, so that you can, see further. And then the big loop in Jonathan is just that he comes back to a flock and wants to share that growth mindset with gulls that are just singly focused on getting food every single day. And so, yeah, growth is huge, and it takes you to new heights, and it shows you new things, and that's the beauty of life, and having kids just carries that on.
What do you mean by that?
The kids part?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not only do the kids grow you, uh, but the kids are going to go beyond what we did. You can look back and you can see what your parents taught you, and the mindsets that they had, and you can see yourself at this point in our lives, go beyond that. And I can't wait. We were just talking the other morning. That someday the kids are going to chuckle at us and call us cute for thinking, the ways that we think, right? Like, it's just inevitable that they take over someday and laugh at me for my inability to utilize VR or AI, or my lack of interest in technology. It's just inevitable, and I think that's life. That's growth, and we're just setting the next ones up to stand on our shoulders and see a little bit further, and whether or not there's a purpose or a meaning to any of that, that's the joy of life. We are just this body that it can experience certain things, right? And we can't even experience everything there is. Arguably, we don't even experience reality in a very real sense. We just experience what our body picks up on, right? And I think life continues to grow on its ability to experience, and our kids are the next step in that growth of life. If life is about anything, it's about that, in
Yeah.
my view.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I mean, growth mindset. And there's a really fantastic book, Dr. Carol Dweck, called
Yeah,
Mindset, right? The
yeah,
growth
read
versus
it.
fixed.
Good.
Yeah, that's so great. And love to hear other fathers talk about that and already kind of be on that journey. You
Yeah.
have you brought up two or three different things in there that I thought were really great. And I know that from a little bit of what we know about you, number one, I know that you homestead, so you have sort of this unique experience and how you live your day to day. And then number two, I know that you're the primary caregiver, and so you're the primary homeschooler, and you're the one that's taking care of the kids. Um, let's Can you describe sort of your experience and how you've taken this value of growth and kind of running away from technology, which I know a lot of fathers out there, a lot of feel good fathers would be like, I wish I could put down my phone more, that they
Yeah.
could experience that and just kind of paint a picture for them to let them know, hey, this is something that you can create.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love this thing, and I hate it at the same time. It's and that's a strong word, but it both interests me and scares me. I think there's a lot to be said for being grounded in what's actually around us, and there's a lot to be said for the power that can be at your fingertips with a device, right? And that's a tricky balance with homeschooling as well. I mean, uh, but I think it's a balance that we have to play out every single day. And so I try to here with the kids. I try to mix what is so valuable about the devices with what is so valuable about the outdoors. And so we grow and we play outside a lot as much as we can. We I have two girls, 11 and 9, and a baby who's 15 months. I guess he's a toddler now. And me and that little one are outside just all the time, all day long. And that's where life happens. And the girls were the same way when they were little, just outside all day long, soaking up the sun, seeing life happen, because everything on a base level is there out in nature. And then we're trying to in this digital world connect the nature with an experience on here, right? Like even what the AI guys are doing is they're trying to bring life onto a computer, you know, and so it's all there, and they're trying to make it here, and the balance is what's fun. Um,
I uh Johan Hari talked a little bit about this in one of his stories, Stolen Focus, his new book, where he was out at some sort of attraction. He was out.
mm,
He had brought his nephew out, and he was out, and he was going on the tour, and there was a sign for a VR experience of wherever it was that they were, and I remember him telling this really curious story because I kind of align with his experience. He says you could scan the barcode to open up a VR environment of the room that you were standing in.
yeah,
And so he was
yeah,
this whole, like this couple's like, isn't this so cool? You can turn the camera and look at the cellar, whatever the room was. And he's like, and you could turn your head and look at the cellar in the room. you know, it's so interesting because I spent about 10 years making video games myself. So generating virtual worlds.
wow,
And I think that one of the things that I wish as a society we would really learn is that we really need to take advantage of the medium.
mm,
One of the big things, movies. Movies are really powerful because they're longer form content, and the director, writer, and actors can
mm,
take you through an emotionally controlled experience.
yeah,
And they can hide things from you. There's imperfect information or perfect information, scenarios, characters interacting, and they're going to bring you through a journey.
mm,
One of the tricky things when we get to interactive entertainment is that you never quite know what the person's going to do. But in these worlds outside of certain specific contexts, like I'm thinking of attending a concert in AR or in virtual reality, or attending a conference or connecting through Zoom like we're doing here, that we should find ways and find things that are unique only in the virtual world. You can never experience this in life.
mm, yeah. That's interesting. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I think, like my brother was really into getting on the VR to ride the rocket up Apollo, right? The new mission, and you can get on the VR and go check that out. And I think that's inspiring and fun. I think we'll continue to see things like that. I think virtual spaces are a great way to play and test out things. I think it's a great place to make mistakes. Uh, and I think that's really valuable because I really value I really value mistake making, but you try and mitigate the risk, right?
Yeah.
And I think it can be as simple as, we can do art endlessly on a tablet and not waste any trees, and that's just like a simple example. You can go to the moon, all of us together with a camera in VR, without having to send us all there. I think there's a lot of value in that virtual space for like what you said, being able to do things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do. Um, yeah, and make mistakes.
And make mistakes. You brought that up a little bit. We were talking about growth mindset earlier. Tell me about making mistakes.
Yeah, I think mistakes are the probably one of the most valuable things that we can learn to enjoy. They really suck sometimes to make them, and I think the pain of them is important, um, because it helps, stick it in your mind. It's like those movies where the guy slaps the son, and tell him to remember
Right.
this lesson. Not that I condone that kind of behavior, but there's something about the pain of a mistake that is valuable, right? But I think we have to learn to love them. We have to learn to love that challenge and a little bit of that pain. Again, you mitigate the risk, but love the pain of that, because if you can learn to love making mistakes, you can do anything, and and you'll be humbled by it, so you'll become a better person, and I think you'll be able to connect with more people.
Mhm.
um, so don't be afraid of your mistakes. That's something I try
Mhm.
to have in my life, and I've made my fair share. I always think I'm so right about something. I think that I'm going to uh, that I definitely know something, and every time I think I definitely know something, it turns out that I'm wrong. Um,
What are
uh,
some things you definitely knew about fatherhood that have
oh,
since been corrected?
uh, my dad always said, you won't know what it's like until you have it. And I think that's so true. And I think we get surprised by how true that is. I get surprised by how true that is. Yeah, I mistakes in fatherhood. I've made a fair share of mistakes in fatherhood. Um, yeah, I think you're never going to be perfect in front of your kids, and I've shown sides of myself in front of my kids. I've gotten angry in ways that I don't like in front of my kids. uh yeah yeah, I've gotten in disagreements with MJ, my wife, in front of the kids, and I think that's every time I see that. But you know as much as that's a mistake, I think it's important for them to see it as
Mhm.
well, if you're going to work through it well, right? And so they can see you make that mistake, and all of a sudden it's not so much a mistake, because now they have a sense of what it is to handle life, right? Um,
I love your comment there, and to pull it back to what we were talking about with virtual worlds and virtual experiences. A lot of our a lot of time is spent in social media by a
mm,
lot of different people, and that world is a curated perfect experience.
mm,
Even in these kind of conversations on a show, or even in some sort of vlog or content creator influencer, we're always highlighting the best, and it
mm,
creates a super weird relationship for the consumer to the creator. And
yeah.
we know that this has negative mental health mental health effects on, especially young girls. As a father of two young ladies, and as you know, we're both kind of, mine's 10, yours 9 and 11, so we're kind of at that age where this is going to be the world that we're walking into. And uh, I think that seeing life, as you were saying, when they were really young, they're outside seeing everything that they have, but also not virtue signaling and not saying life is perfect and this is what marriage is, but that it's actually about relationships and fixing and making, as you're saying, making mistakes and growing together and reconciling. That's critically important.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, you got to keep it real. I think we hide too much from our kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we don't own our mistakes in front of our kids enough, you know? Uh, I've done some risky things with my kids, Jay, and I'll throw myself under the bus. Like, I remember this one time we were in Hawaii, and we were living there for a few years, and the whales were out, and we were in this bay, and you couldn't hear the whales very well inside the bay because the waves were just crashing, right? And you had to get under the water to hear them because it travels better, and you had to really be in some still water. So I took my daughter, and she was a good swimmer, but she was like, I want to say 6, maybe 7. And I took her out. She's a good swimmer, like good swimmer, spends every day in the pool. It's just what we do, right? And in the ocean. And we went out to hear the whales, right? We get out past where it's breaking and the swells are just gently rolling up and down 3 or 4 feet. It was rough, but not that rough. And we listened to the whales, and it was great. And we tried to come back in, and it was not great. And they can't see you from shore because the waves are there. And
Mm,
I'm like, man, mistake, big
mm.
mistake. And it's something we owned up, but in that position, um, you know, we had a trust built, me and her, and I told her, lay on your back, and I'm just gonna haul you in. It's gonna take forever, but I'm gonna haul you in. And she just laid on her back, and I just hung onto her swimsuit, and just, we drug in. And it was a fight because the tide started to turn, and it was a mistake. It was a mistake, one
Mm.
that I hope I don't make again. And but but we built a relationship, and we had a good relationship to begin with, and we built trust through that as well. um and you got to put yourself out there sometimes to have experiences, real experiences. And yeah, 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 plenty
I
of
think,
mistakes.
yeah, man. Uh, I think that's great. Like, I think it's good on multiple occasions, right? You're talking about, we were in it, we were in the junk,
Yeah,
and we were acknowledging that we're in the junk, and now, you get back to shore, you set expectations appropriately, and you're like, all right, let's let's go. This is gonna take some time. And then you
right.
also mentioned that you got to shore and you were like, that was
That was a
dumb.
mistake.
That was a mistake.
And she knows, and I talked to her about it, and it's like, that was not smart. Don't do that with your kids.
Is this one of those, when my wife and I have this joke where there's a situation that we had where it wasn't funny in the moment, but we
Yeah,
laugh about it later, like now.
totally.
Is that one of those
Totally.
things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So let's if you don't mind going here, I think this is going to be really valuable to the Feel Good Father listening. Let's suppose that you're a father and you're in, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. You're in a dangerous situation,
Mm,
right? It's you and your kid,
yeah.
stuff's going on. Walk us through sort of how you navigated that.
Yeah, I think there's different types of people. Okay. Um, and I don't know. I'd have to think about how we cultivated it in the family. But when things get crazy in our family, we get really calm, and so we really dial it down, right? And we focus on what's important in the moment. And for whatever reason, between MJ and I, we've been really successful at that. If I can pat myself on the back, I put myself in some sticky situations, but we are very calm about it, and we breed that calmness in the kids as much as possible. Keeping a level head, stoicism.
Hmm. Hmm.
We're seeing the emotions, but seeing them as signposts, right? And focusing on what's important in the moment. And um, yeah, yeah. There's this other time, and again, a dumb mistake. We were teaching the girls how to backflip into the pool,
Hmm.
and we missed. We got the edge, and she's bleeding, and it was rough. But we all worked together. We were a team. We have that mindset that when things need to get done, we do it, and we do it together, and we stay calm about it when we take those breaths.
So you know, the the inevitable, your kid does something and gets a boo-boo, right? Or
Yeah.
cracks or whatever open, or has is bleeding, or you're out in the waves in the swell. The first thing is you're taking stock of what's going on. You're staying calm.
Mm,
Then you're coming together. You're saying, hey, we're gonna come together, we're gonna do it together.
mm,
And then you mentioned that there's another step, like, hey, once the situation resolved, you had sort of like a retro or like a conversation about what happened. What was that?
totally.
So if we're, it's calm, collaborate. What's that next? So how do you describe that part when you're back to shore?
Yeah, I think that's where you can really take the lesson to reflecting and learning the responsibility. What steps did I take? What could I have done differently? Computers are getting really good at this now, which is the scary bit, right? Lex was just talking the other day with this guy about poker computers, right? And
This is
how,
for the Feel Good Father. This is Lex Friedman from the Lex
yeah,
Friedman podcast. Go ahead, Brett.
yeah, yeah. He's talking with this guy about AI and how uh, they're designing them, and they can do a certain search function. I don't understand the stuff as well as I should. But they have a search function that allows them to predict into the future based on moves that have happened in the past, right?
Got it.
And so they can play themselves, and they play themselves millions of games, right? And each time they get to reflect back on the mistakes that they made. So a computer is getting really good at learning and can beat us every time at Go, at Texas Hold'em, at pretty much any game that's zero sum. It can kick our butt any day because of its ability to reflect and make millions and millions of mistakes and be able to see them all, right? And so it reflects at the end of each game and says, what could I have done better? And so it narrows down the probability of things, and it takes responsibility and then applies that to future games and does even better the next time, right? And I think that's what you do with your kids. We're just a lot slower at it. So at the end of a mistake, you get through it, and you have a chuckle, and you say, what else could I have done? What other options did I have that I didn't see at the time, but now I know. What risks did I miss that I could assess better in the future? Um, yeah.
That's interesting. So how do you reconcile this? You're on the island in this world where you can, nature is basically pretty dangerous, right? There's either predators or nature just in general.
Yeah.
And so you've got this opportunity to go and hear the whales, and it's a weird day.
Mm.
What would you do differently, or how did you apply that specific learning to another situation later on down the road?
Yeah. I think we could have had a buddy system. We could have had another swimmer.
Hmm.
We could have had a boogie board, or a flotation device.
Hmm.
I think we could think about the tides more and be more aware of the environment and what's going on. Um, yeah, a whole slew of things we could find better.
Was there a moment for you where you were like, hold on, this is a whale listening moment, and you kind of stop yourself and we're like, hold on, let's reflect on what we're doing here?
I we got out there and we had that moment, and then we were like, oh, afterwards. And there was no real break after that. It was like, okay, we gotta hustle, we gotta get back in, we gotta focus. And to her credit, she stayed calm. I mean, she was young, good swimmer, but it would have been too much for her, and it was a lot for me. And it was a lot for me. And I'm a pretty strong swimmer.
Got it.
Uh,
Got it. Okay.
but yeah.
What are the big things that you learned from your family?
My dad was all about responsibility, all about it. If anything that you don't take responsibility for, you have no power over. So my dad was always about, if you want to sit here and complain about the environment or the crime rates or you name it, and those are like very outward, problems or anything regarding yourself, those are the simple ones, right? But if you want to complain about anything that's wrong in you or the world, you should go out and do something about it, because you're responsible for it. And if you don't want to be responsible for it, then you shouldn't complain about it.
Mm.
That was my dad's lesson. And he was big on, creating the life that you wanted. He was very adamant about you get what you focus on, and not, you know he was kind of a law of attraction guy back then. The law of attraction was the power of the subconscious mind. I don't know if you've ever
Right.
read that book, but there was,
Mhm.
back in the 70s, I think there was the power of the subconscious mind, or even maybe before that. And he was big on that, and I'm not sure about the whole how that works out, but I do know that whatever you focus on, um, you tend to see, and you see the opportunities for in your life, right? So it can be as simple as you can go driving down the road, right, and say, you know, what a pleasant drive, and everything feels good to you. And you can go out on the same day at the same time and say, people are driving nuts, and all you see is people driving nuts, because whatever you choose to have in your perspective is what's in front of you. Well, if you choose to have opportunities in front of you, you have opportunities. If you choose not to have opportunities in front of you, if you choose to feel like the world is against you, and things are tough, it's gonna feel that way. Our minds respond to the thoughts that we keep. And so he was adamant about that as well. That the biggest area that you can be responsible for is your own thoughts. Because if you let your thoughts run wild, and you just believe everything that pops into your head, your life is chaos. Because you've given up responsibility for that aspect, and that's where you live. That's where you perceive from, is that one space, right? So if you can take responsibility of what goes on inside your head, you can affect the world in front of you in positive or negative ways. A positive, you take responsibility.
What's one thing that a feel good father could do to cultivate this skill?
um Reflection, I think, is huge. I think you have to take time to reflect. I think self-honesty is one of the hardest darn things there are out there. Like true self-honesty, because you can sit there and be like, I'm an honest guy, I say what I'm feeling all that, but there's another level below that. And I'm sure that there's another level below that level that I'm talking about that I'm not even aware of yet. But I think self honesty, that pursuit, and really digging deep to the underlying motivations of why you do things. I think if you can figure yourself out, you figure other people out as well. If you can understand your driving forces, we're not all that much different, Jay. You know what I
Oh, I
mean?
hear you. I
Not in
got you.
my experience.
Yeah.
We're all pretty similar, and we have similar thoughts. We have very similar motivations. We are a meat bag of a computer, that has certain motivations, and positive feedback loops that get us to do certain things. And if you can dig deep to that honesty, I think you can uh, find a lot of peace and contentment and purpose in life. Um, and it's a venture of self exploration. I think more to your question, I think meditation and reflection,
Mhm.
writing
Mhm.
out your feelings,
Mhm.
becoming very aware of your thoughts, and then being like, wait a second. And like, is that really why I was doing that? Like, did I really give that guy, the change out of my pocket because, I'm being philanthropic? Like, what are your motivations behind things? I think the more you can self-explore, uh, the better you have a chance at, again, taking that responsibility in areas of your life that you were before not aware you had. And every time you do that, every time you can get honest about it and then take responsibility for those feelings, instead of, like Inside Out, how
Yeah.
they're like
Yep.
in her head, right? And they're talking to her all the time. I was just telling my girls this morning, like Riley doesn't know that, fear and sadness and disgust and joy are all going on inside her head, but we all get to see it, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? From the
Mhm.
outside perspective, we can see all those characters in her mind and how it's affecting her life, right? Well, that's going on inside of all of us. I think it's a beautiful description. They did awesome on that movie. I can't wait for them to come out with more, because it's so true. And if you can start to become aware of those characters that are in your mind, um, it gives you extreme power over how you affect your life. And yeah, reflection is huge. Meditation, writing, get comfortable with your uncomfortable thoughts.
Well, this is interesting. So, our brains develop at different ages, right? So, our young toddlers and stuff like that are running around between 1 and 3. They're barely able to have. They're not even able to have abstract thoughts until they're in their teenage years,
Yeah.
right? And the connections, there's no sense of time until they're about 6 years old. There's just kind of like always the present.
Right.
So, and you've been through this a handful of times. So what does the modeling of this look like? What is the how is the passing on of this value to you? It's something I can clearly see that you've referenced consciousness, meditation, self-reflection, responsibility of your thoughts, of your emotions, stoicism, all these different tools that are all about like,
Mm,
hey, this, and then the end result being let's create some calm, right? Let's have an understanding of what this thing is doing, and let's
mm,
create some outward calm. How do you instill this into the various age groups? Feel good fathers are dying to know.
mm. I think, as with anything else, lead with example.
Mm-hmm.
And so you show the reflection process. You open up to them about the reflection process. Um, at a young age, you have to try to get as early as possible. My dad set us down at 3 years old. I have vague memories of this, but I was on a couch and he's saying, you know, if you want to act like a child, I'll treat you like a child. But if you want to act like a grown up, I'll treat you like a grown up.
Mm-hmm.
At 3, okay, so this is fairly early for a lot of people to have this kind of conversation, right? But his point, and he was very good at making this happen, is if you take responsibility in your life and you act responsibly, you can go out and do whatever you want. You have full freedom, to make whatever mistakes you want to make and go out there and do it. But if you want to act like a child about things and you want to, complain and moan and, throw a fit or whatever, if you want to not take care of things, if you want to show me that you're not responsible, that just equals not having freedom, right? And so the lesson was very, very clear. Whenever you take responsibility for your life and things in your life, you have full power. You have control. You have freedom. It's something that we all crave, and especially kids, right? And I think you can start really young with kids on that. When if that lesson is the only lesson that they get, then it's not a bad one. That's not a bad thing. If they remember no history dates and struggle in math or whatever, if they can get the idea that they have power over the amount of freedom that they have in their lives, eventually they're going to take the reins and say, okay, I'm going to take responsibility so that I can have more freedom. And that just grows, from there. I think from every age beyond that, it grows. But you can start early. Kids, we look at kids, and I think more often than not, we misjudge them for being less than they actually are. And I could be wrong about this. I'm no neuroscientist, but my kids are pretty magical. And I think everybody's kids are actually pretty magical. When you see what some young kids are doing out there, it's phenomenal. You know about the guy? He wanted to go out and find if you could make a genius out of anybody. So he married this teacher. I want to say they're Nordic or something, but he married a teacher, and they said, hey, we're going to make geniuses together. And so they had these, I think, 2 daughters, and everything in their life, everything was chess, right? And he taught them, like, all their pictures, all their quotes, everything around them, they surrounded with chess, and they taught them chess, and they grew up to be chess geniuses. Like, just everything was based off of chess, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's a great and fulfilling childhood, and those girls have gone on to do other things, but they credit chess for their brilliance, and they are master chess players, right? And they are geniuses. And so he proved his point and did it with his kids. Tip my hat to him. He set off to do something, and he did it. But the I think kids are far more capable of understanding things than we give them credit for a lot of times, and at much earlier ages. You ever heard of EC, elimination communication?
No, I don't.
So
Tell
this
us.
could be totally bogus, right? And I've heard comedians give it shit before, but yeah, you can teach your kid to go on the potty at a really early age. Like these parents, the ones that are serious about it, at a couple weeks old, they start holding their kid over the toilet really early on, right? My daughters, I had them both on the toilet, 10 months old. I stopped doing diapers. Okay. It
Yep.
was pretty cool. Before they could talk, they could tell me that I got to poop,
All right.
and that's awesome, But most parents think, oh, I can't do that until they're 2 or 3 years old, right? And I think that it's just a small example of if you believe in them and you show them possibilities, their minds are super capable of grasping complex things. They understand cause and effect. My boy right now, he understands what happens when my shirt goes on. Because I live shirtless here in Florida. This is the only time you're going to see me in a shirt, Jay.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I live outside with the sun on my back. But when I put my shirt on, my baby boy from very early on knew we're going on a car ride. We're going out because dad got dressed. They get things, and we think that they don't, but that's simple cause and effect. That's simple stuff. They have to learn how to walk, and they're picking up language very quickly. That stuff's far more complex than behave good and have more freedom. That's a simple concept in the grand scheme of things. And so I think you can teach that early on.
I absolutely love it. I think that this whole idea of the environment that you create, that intentional environment that you create is going to show up in your kids.
Yeah.
I keep thinking of, we are now about 10, 15 years into this experiment of internet and social media and this like global connectiveness.
Yeah.
And it's significant because we're starting to see more people, both the parent and the kids, using the same tech, being on the
Mm,
same platform. And
yeah.
so I think a lot about, Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson, and
Mm,
how she's like, I grew up in this world and there was mythology and art and art, and all this Renaissance paintings and all these ancient stuff and like all this symbolism and
A wild house.
this wild, this crazy wild house,
Yeah.
clinical psychologist, all that kind of stuff. And whether you like him or not, I think though, what you can see is the result. You can see both of them. You can see Michaela. You can see Dr. Peterson. You can see them, out there in the world doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And what I love about it, and what I would love for Feel Good Fathers, is that same sense of, as you're saying, that responsibility. What you fill your house with, your kids will adopt. Your kids will pay attention to. Your kids will become,
Yes.
and they are little parrots. They're little modeling parrot machines.
That's
And
what they're
so,
made to do.
yep.
Yeah.
And uh, there's so many little idioms here. The what is it? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
Is an expression of, oh, like father like son, like father, that kind of stuff. All these
Yeah.
different quotes. I really love this whole idea, this intentionality.
Mm.
So Brett, uh, if folks wanted to follow up with you, where could they find you?
You can shoot me an email or you can find me on Facebook. I think I'm Brett Gordon on Facebook. And I'm Brett8D at Gmail.
Got it.
Um, I would love to hear from people. It's my intention to build more community, and we didn't talk about that much today, but I think community is huge, and I'm in the process of trying to build that. There's some people out there doing really great things for men and for dads. I think it's a challenging time for men. MKP, the Mankind Project, is
Yes.
I think they're doing some really cool things. I have a friend in Hawaii that started his own group based on that. And I think community is huge, and I love meaningful conversation, and I love being challenged and finding out that I did things wrong or that there's another way to do things. I love that. So if anybody wants to get into that, I love those ideas, and um, yeah, life is a joy. So if we can figure that out together, that's all the better. All the
Awesome.
better.
Thank you so much, Brett. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay.
Hey, Feel Good Fathers, hit that like button to let YouTube know that you liked this video. Comment below with your thoughts and reactions to this interview. I really want to hear what you have to say. Now, as a personal brand strategist, I hear all the time about coaches, trainers, speakers, and authors doing the right thing, but at the wrong time. We specialize in helping brand builders have more impact, more credibility and clarity, and developing an overall brand strategy. When you work with Brand Builders Group, we'll help you do the right thing at the right time. Request a free brand call below. There's a link in the description. And don't forget to subscribe. You'll get updates when the new episodes are launched, and it really helps out the community and the channel. We'll see you next time.